Okay, subtracting real numbers. The actual definition of subtracting numbers is to add the opposite. Some of you guys recall that or was told the keep, switch, flip, or keep, change, or whatever way that helps you remember it. But the actual definition of subtracting numbers is adding the opposite. So let's take a look at a couple examples. Okay, so here we go. First, I'm going to go ahead and use the definition of subtracting, which is to add the opposite. So what that means is I'm going to have 8 add the opposite of negative 15, which is 15. So it just became a nice normal addition problem. So 8 plus 15 is 23, and that's it. Okay, so in this second example, we have a negative 7 minus a 9. So again, by definition, we of subtraction, we add the opposite. So that means negative 7 plus the opposite of 9 is negative 9. So here we have two negative numbers being added together. So it's going to end up being a negative 16. Okay, and since we're dealing with real numbers include fractions as well as integers. So here we're going to be subtracting this negative 8/9 and this negative 5/6. But in order to do that, we need to have a common denominator. So since we have a 9 and a 6 as our denominators, we need to find the LCM or the LCD, which is 18. So that means I'm going to have to multiply each of these fractions by some factor to make the denominator 18. So in this case, we're going to multiply the top and bottom by 2, and in this one, we're going to multiply the top and bottom by 3 so that we have a fraction with a common denominator. All right, so now that we have a common denominator, we're going to use the subtraction definition. So that means we're going to have negative 16 over 18 plus a positive 10 over 18. Okay, so again, we have a negative and a positive. If you forget when to add and subtract, I use the scoreboard to help me remember. So I have a negative 16, so that'll be over here in the negative side, and a positive 10, so that'll be on the 10 side. So anytime they're on different sides, we go ahead and subtract. So we're going to subtract 16 minus 10, which gives me a 6. And the team that had the most points was the negative. So this is going to end up giving me a negative 6 over 18, which we can simplify to be, or simplify by 6 on the top and the bottom, giving us a negative 1 over 3. Okay, in this next example, we have absolute value bars. And one mistake that students make is they try to apply the absolute value bars at the beginning, which we don't. We work everything inside the absolute value first and then apply the absolute value. So let's take a look at what we have. We have a negative 10.46 minus a negative 3.5. So again, we're using our subtraction rule, which means add the opposite. So inside these absolute value bars, we have a negative 10.46 plus the opposite of negative 3.5, which is a positive 3.5. So that's inside these absolute value bars. So here, once again, I have a positive and a negative number being added together, and I can't remember if I'm going to actually add it or subtract it. So I look at my scoreboard over here, and I have a negative 10.46, so that's over here on the negative side, and I have a positive 3.5, so that's on the positive side, and I know that the negatives have a bigger number, so my answer is going to be negative. They're on different sides, so I go ahead and subtract those from each other. So 10.46 minus 3.5, we have to line up the decimals. So we line up the decimals, and I have an empty space right here. And that empty space, I fill it in with a 0, so I can go ahead and subtract. So 6 minus 0 is 6. We're going to borrow from this 10. The 10 becomes 9. This 4 now becomes 14. So 14 take away 5 is 9. Bring down the decimal. 9 take away 3 is 6. And once again, the negatives have the bigger number. So my answer is going to be negative. So inside these absolute value, I have negative 6.96. And now finally I can take the absolute value. The absolute value of a negative 6.96 is just 6.96, because absolute value just means the distance from 0. So negative 6.96 is 6.96 units away from 0 on a number line. So there you go, subtracting real numbers and a little introductory or refresher of absolute value.